Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I want to begin by expressing my deepest gratitude to each of you for joining me today. I know that as educators, our time is valuable and that every moment we spend together is time taken away from preparing lessons, grading, or working directly with our students. The fact that you are here today speaks volumes about your dedication to improving student achievement and your willingness to collaborate for the success of all of our learners. Today's meeting is an important continuation of the work we began in the last two sessions. In Observation Video 1, we came together to review our data and identify an area of concern that needed immediate attention. Through our discussion and analysis, we were able to agree upon a student learning gap that has been consistently reflected in our STAR assessment data. In Observation Video number 2, the purpose of that meeting was to collaborate and decide on one or two concrete strategies that we as a team committed to implementing in our classrooms. The strategies that we came up with to directly target the gaps we identified in our students' performance. The purpose of this Observation Video number 3 activity is to provide the intern the opportunity to collaborate with his or her grade level team, department team, professional learning committee team, or campus faculty group in a 45-minute focus group discussion to monitor program strategies and report progress. Before we begin, I want to emphasize that this is a team effort. Each of you bring unique experiences, strengths, and insights. Every perspective is valuable. The richness of the discussion will come from hearing multiple voices and considering strategies from different angles. As we collaborate, I encourage you to share openly what has worked for you, what challenges you have faced, and what you believe might move our students forward. Feel free to share examples from your own classroom practice, even small successes, because sometimes it's those small adjustments that create the largest impact over time. Once again, the purpose of this practicum observation activity is to provide the intern the opportunity to collaborate with his or her grade level team, department team, professional learning community team, or campus faculty group in a 45-minute group focus discussion to monitor program strategies and report progress. So in this video, we will review the activity developed in video number 2. We will discuss the effectiveness of the implemented strategy from video number 2. We will analyze teacher and student behaviors, explore future strategies to address the instructional need identified in video number 1. Today's session will serve as observation video number 3, reporting progress, monitoring, and adjusting, part 2, formal observation. Before we begin, I'd like each of you to introduce yourself. Please share your name, what you teach, and how many years you have been in education. Ms. Lopez.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Lopez. I am a first grade bilingual teacher. I have been teaching for 5 years, and I have been working for Aldine for 10 years now.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Irma Jimenez. I am a bilingual second grade teacher. I have been with Aldine for 21 years. I think that's it. Yeah, second grade bilingual.
Okay.
Good afternoon, my name is Elena Giles. I am a third grade bilingual math and science teacher, This is my 3rd year teaching.
Good afternoon, I am Kimberly Jones. I am a first grade ELA social studies teacher, and I've been teaching 28 years.
And I'm the intern, Antoinette Gales. This is my 4th year teaching first grade math and science. Okay, thank you for introducing yourselves. Now let's take a moment to revisit the norms that we established in the very first video. So one of our norms was to be attentive, be respectful, respect everyone's opinions, participate, and be engaged. So do we all agree with those norms
Yes.
still? Do we
Yes.
need to add anything, take anything away? Okay. So now let's quickly review the work from videos 1 and 2. In video 1, we conducted a needs assessment. Our data included math and reading STAR data for grades 3 through 5 of non-economically disadvantaged students and economically disadvantaged students. From this data, we identified the instructional needs of students that are in testing grades. We as a group came up with the conclusion that if foundational skills are not laid in the earlier grades, students tend to struggle later in testing grades, so in grades 3 through 5. In video 2, we collaboratively developed and implemented the strategies for our small group RTI time. These strategies included ABBA, guided questioning, and peer partnering. Today, our focus is on analyzing how our strategies worked so far and discussing next steps. So to start, let's discuss the strategies that we implemented. So what successes have you noticed since implementation out of, if you've practiced the ABBA, the guided questioning, or the peer partnering? So what are some successes have you noticed since that implementation from after the last video?
Well, I guess it kind of gives them the opportunity to talk, to speak about the content that we're using during that lesson. And then of course, you know, since they're like sentence stems, it gives them also the idea of, you know, the thought process that goes with that content. Because sometimes when you ask them, you know, when you're talking to them, you ask them the questions, they're kind of like, you know, just trying to think of what to say. But with the ABBA, we can, you know, it guides them. It guides them to, you know, with their thinking process and what to put together, so that way they can have a good foundation for their conversation.
Anybody else?
I have noticed that it gives each student a chance to participate and talk, you know, because when we're asking questions, we can't ask everybody. But when they do turn and talk with their partners or do the ABA, you know, they all have a say, and it makes them feel like they are heard. You know, even though maybe they didn't speak with the teacher, but they got to speak with the partner, and they feel more, you know, involved
Engaged.
with engaged, involved in the lesson.
I agree, and I just want to add that I've also felt or like noticed an increase in their confidence just in general, like participating. Now they're more willing to participate and open to participate as like a whole class too, because after they've talked to their partner, they've already gained some understanding of like, oh, okay, this is what she's looking for, this is the answer, and this is why. They've also become a lot better at teaching each other and like offering that help, not just like not giving each other the answers, but actually explaining the process. And through like the explaining, they're also gaining a better understanding of the content themselves. Like even if they weren't struggling, they're getting better.
And I've noticed with ABBA as well, piggybacking off of everyone else's great ideas, they learn to use complete sentences. So when they're reading text and they're answering questions from the text, they're able to begin using those complete sentences that are included in the app, and it helped show a lot of improvement on my second test that my kids were given. So I noticed the difference in sentences.
So what challenges, if any, like what barriers did you encounter when implementing these, like the ABBA, the guided question, or peer partnering? Like what were some challenges that you came across?
Some challenges that I can think of right off the bat are that some students just don't know or haven't had enough exposure to like working with others, and they just don't collaborate well. They've improved, but that is a challenge for some of my students. And then on top of that, the language, if the language of instruction changes, considering I'm teaching bilingual students to English, that just like that confidence in like reading in English and then elaborating and explaining their thoughts in English is a big challenge for them.
And it was difficult before, like we started progress monitoring. It was different before then.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Did you have
I
something?
agree with her. I've noticed with my students, when we are in Spanish, they're eager to participate, but once we switch to English, they're a little bit more timid, more shy. They are more hesitant to participate. And I've tried to, make them feel confident, and they're like, but I don't know English, I don't know how to say this. And I'm like, that's fine. That's why I'm here, to help you. Just try your best. But I do notice that they are a little bit more quiet when it comes to when we work in English, the English language.
You have anything to say, Ms.
I think they are building confidence and learning to be able to speak, and everyone is allowed the opportunity to speak, so you're not holding anyone behind. So,
And I think with building that positive environment for them to practice with the conversation, the learning conversational strategy, it not only builds that confidence, but it also gives them a purpose for being there in the classroom. Sometimes they feel like because of the language barrier, they can't participate and they can't, be, I guess, kind of like in a safe zone to be able to say what they can and what they know. And so I just tell them that, there's not a wrong answer. If you're trying and you're trying to put your effort, to use the language, then you're moving forward. So you need to continue to, use what you can. The other thing that I'd like to use are the word banks. And that way it can trigger their thoughts as well. So I'll have a word bank and I'll remind them, okay, don't forget to use these words in the word bank when you're trying to speak to your partner or when you're using our conversational piece. So I try to give them those helpful tools so that way they have somewhere where to start. And then that way they're in a safe environment to be able to speak and nobody's judging them. They're using what they're learning. Content is hard across the board anyways, for not only bilingual students, but for monolingual students as well. So the academic language is a challenge. So I believe in all areas, they're gonna struggle, but as long as we implement the tools that they need, then they'll be able to go ahead and put their thoughts together and be able to speak on what they're learning.
Okay, so how did, like, when it was first, when these, like, especially like specifically in small groups, how was it when you introduced these strategies in small group? Were the kids like kind of, how were they, like, what were their reactions? How did they respond to you the first time around, like when we through the process, like how did it? Because I know they have the confidence now, but
Right.
yeah.
So they did feel a little bit more at ease because it was a smaller group. It wasn't all the time, with the whole group. So they just felt like they could talk, without worrying about what they were saying, if they were going to say it correctly or incorrectly. So I just felt like they were at ease. They were comfortable.
Okay. And then, how did you all like progress monitor? Cause I know we have first, second, and third grade here, but how did you like check to see if their grades increased or if their knowledge increased? Like, what was your progress monitoring like method that you used for, I guess, measurement, like to measure their knowledge of whatever you were teaching in your small group?
So whenever I'm analyzing the data for like considering like just like exit tickets or end of module assessments, I look at the learning targets and I
So
create.
Eduphoria,
Yes, like for end of module assessments, I look at the questions they scored the least on, and then depending on that, that's where I like decide whether I'm going to like reinforce it or I'm going to like reteach to the whole class or who needs that extra help. And then I look into the question and I like guide myself through like the process that they would have gone through for the question. And then okay, like so they need to identify, they need to compare the numbers, for example, like ordering numbers from greatest to least or least to greatest. They need to be able to compare numbers, but before that, they need to be able to put the numbers in a place value chart. And before that, they need to be able to label the place value chart. So I make a list of the learning targets per like TEK and question, and then that helps me create like a checklist of how or what they should know, and that is what I use as a guide to whether or not they've mastered the TEKs for that specific like small group lesson. And I usually meet with them like 2 to 3 times a week, and then that's like a 2-week cycle, I would say, and then that's what I would use as a guide.
And then what about reading from a reading teacher? Because I have 2 reading teachers. Like what? Like the same question.
And that's the same thing. We use our learning checkpoints to identify the kids who have mastered or shown progress, as well as daily. We're using the active observation tool, where I'm able to walk around and take notes of who the strategy that we're working on, who showed progress, who's able to do it, who am I gonna pull into the small group again. But it's basically in exit tickets, using that data to decide, like she said, whether to reteach or bring them into small group again.
Okay, so what teacher behaviors or instructional practices do you think supported the student growth, your students' growth?
So, I think kind of like offering clear and concise instructions, you know, reteaching the vocabulary, the language structure that we had to do. We also had to learn how to scaffold. So instead of having a complex, you know, problem, we needed to break them, you know, into smaller parts, so that way we could show them step by step how we're gradually reaching the response that they were supposed to get at the beginning. So I think those steps help them also be able to express, you know, what they were supposed to know when they were doing, you know, when we were doing the exam or the assessment. Because most of the time, I think they see the test and it's just like a big, you know, thing for them. They don't know how to like kind of situate it to where, okay, we're gonna do number one, these are the steps that you need to do. And instead they're just kind of thinking at it as, you know, just something big that they gotta accomplish, they gotta finish. Yeah, to overthink it. So, I think when you're having your guided questioning in your small group, you know, you have to break it down and you have to let them know, you know, show them a strategy also. If they can read through the problems and do all the easy ones that they know already, then they can work on those first. And then after they get through the ones that they already know, then they can start working on the harder ones. And so those are the ones that, of course, you know, either they're struggling with and it's a challenge. So when you have them in the small group, then you already know, okay, well, I know, you know, this student needed this to be broken down a little bit further for them, because this is why I see, you know, in their work that they were having difficulty with.
Anybody else? No. next question. So did you notice, 'cause I know we're departmentalized, so did you notice any patterns across different classes? Like, were there any patterns with, low kids, high kids, the ones that meet right there in the middle? Like, what did you notice in your different classes?
I'm thinking of like math specifically. Dual language is taught, like we alternate between languages. So when I was teaching in Spanish, a lot of students that were struggling in language arts were succeeding in my class, and they had a lot more confidence. And when I would talk to my partner teacher, we would see the differences of like, oh, really, this student isn't working in your class because they're doing a great job in mine, and they're finishing everything, and they're motivated, and they're the ones who participate the most. And then now having switched over to English, that confidence is like starting to decrease. Yes, but putting into practice like strategies like we discussed are helping them grow, and like they're still able to do and like to relate the English to the Spanish, but it is a little bit more challenging. That's what I've noticed.
Okay. Ms. Jones? You have?
Yeah, we, between ELA and math, I do notice that my partner and I, we do have some kids that are struggling on both ends, but then, sometimes Ms. Gills may have a kid that's struggling, and when he's in Harlem, like you said, like, that one is struggling, I don't have problems with that one, so I guess it depends on, some kids are stronger in reading, some kids are stronger in math, so, yeah, so there is some similarities in between both classes, and then there are some, differences.
Okay.
I would agree. I think, my partner and I, we have the same, issues. The ones that are struggling with me are also struggling with her, but I do have some that are doing better in my class than in math class, so pretty much the same what they both said.
Let's see, so just I guess I'm gonna ask for like specific examples of student engagement or behavior. Like, if you could just all give me like one example of a positive and a negative of like student examples, and how, like, since we've been doing this progress monitoring since early October, like what is like a positive student example and a negative student example? Like, has everyone, I guess, grown, or do you have some that have gone backwards? So can y'all give me, and I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about that if you want. I can. And anybody can just jump in whenever they're ready before, because I'll give you another minute if you need it. I know for me, I can start. For me, I have students like doing whole group. I have a couple, they won't do anything, they won't participate in any way. But as soon as I pull those small groups and like I start to see, okay, well, this student needed this type of questioning, or maybe I should, in my small groups, I started like kind of mixing the groups a little bit to see if they could like, I guess, rub off on the student that's struggling. So that's helped. And so I've had students that have actually grown, and then I have some that haven't. Like, I can put them in with in those heterogeneous groups too, and they still won't participate or haven't grown. So there's a positive and a negative side to that for me, from what I've experienced.
Well, I think the positive for me has been to where I do have some that are very eager to answer. During whole group, they're the first ones to, to want to give the response, that we're looking for. So I usually what I try to do with that is when they're excited to answer, I'll pick on one of them, and then I have the rest of the group repeat what they said. So that way, on the next time, maybe if that question comes up as well, then another student will be able to, to remember, and will be able to repeat, what they had learned. So I do have, that type of, positive engagement. And then the negative is, for the ones that are still shy, they either might still be struggling with the content, or even with, when I do provide the word bank, they still don't know really how to put it in a complete sentence. So I might get a phrase, or I might get a couple words, and so I just have to remind them, okay, now we're gonna put it in a complete sentence. Let's use the words that you just said, but let's use it in a complete sentence. So I think that's when they're kind of, being challenged. But other than that, I mean, it gives them, every student has their role. And so I try to remind them that, not everybody's gonna be learning on the same capacity. Everybody's gonna be different, but it's gonna be okay, because we can all do something. It might be something small, but we can still do something, I always let them know that this is an I can class, not an I can't. And so no matter big or small, they can still contribute to, our instruction and, what we're learning, for that lesson. So yeah, it's been nice.
I would say that similarly to what you mentioned, I also have and I can think of their faces are coming to mind of those students that don't participate at all, or struggle to stay on task whenever it's whole group, and but even because it's so hard to be near them at all times if I'm teaching whole group, even if I have them sitting near the front or then sitting near my desk. But when I pull them for small group, they're very engaged and they're eager to learn, and they're participating, and they're even the ones teaching other students within that whole group. So and they're sharing, yes, with the peer partnering, they're able to teach each other. One negative that comes to my mind is thinking of one student specifically. He sees it as a negative thing to come to the table, because in his mind, it's like, oh, I'm struggling, and that's why I'm here. But I've emphasized many times, you're not here just because you're struggling. Everyone needs help, because everyone needs to grow, and everyone's learning something. They're learning at different paces and different levels, and that's fine. So I feel like that's the challenge that comes.
He kind of pulls back, because we do have students that think, oh, if I go to small group, that means I don't understand. But they all have to go to small group. It's just some students are here, some students they're at different levels. So we have to let them know, I guess, to get them more engaged when they come back there to small group, or even in class doing whole group. Do y'all have something?
I think that I have some kids that they depend on only small groups, or when I'm calling small group, then they feel like they have to be the only ones there. So of course I work with them the most, the ones that are struggling the most, but you do have to teach them that they have to also become more independent. And on times when I do have to work with other kids, but they feel more comfortable when they're in a small group. Most of my struggling kids, because it's super low.
Yeah, in my case, it's the same. I feel like my students are a little bit more shy. They feel more comfortable when they're just, with me in a small group of 3 to 4, because I don't like to have more than 4 in my small groups. So they feel a little bit more comfortable to make mistakes and ask questions. I feel like when they're in the whole group, you know, they're embarrassed. They're like, okay, what if, you know, I asked the wrong thing, or, you know, so they don't really participate. One negative thing I would say is that I have some students, my higher ones, I see them, you know, in small group, but not as much as I do with my lower groups. And they come up to me because they also want my attention. When are you gonna call me? You only call me once, and you've called them already like 2 times per week. And I'm like, your turn is coming. So they also want that attention from me. But, you know, I don't see them as often because they don't need that much help. So that would be one negative. I guess it's a positive and negative. I'm not sure.
That they're eager to
Yeah,
learn.
that they're eager. Yeah.
Okay.
So what instructional practices, like the strategies that we came up with, what were the most effective in your small groups? Wow, you know, what was like the ABBA, what was it, the
Guided
Guided
question.
questioning and peer partner? What are the most effective or successful practices, instructional practices that you use?
I'm gonna say, the guided questioning, and also when I'm questioning them, start using the Strive for 5. So, you know, where I either spiral down or scaffold down if they're struggling, and it kind of helps them as I'm guiding them, or if I see that they got it, then, you know, I will scaffold up on that person. But I feel like that has been effective as well in small grouping.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything? Was that?
I would say probably the ABBA is most beneficial in my case because, like Ms. Jimenez had mentioned earlier, it guides them through. So like even if they are just confused, they don't know what's being asked, they don't know how to start, that helps them get started. And like she said, word banks are often beneficial for the students who need it. The ones who don't are able to better organize their thoughts. And like it was also mentioned previously, it just helps them develop so many skills in one, and helps them have that confidence that helps them speak in complete sentences, which we know a lot of our students struggle with. So I would say that's probably the most beneficial one for me.
And for the students, what were there specific behaviors that indicated growth or struggle? Like, did behavior get better? Did it get worse, or did it stay the same? So, like, you know, sometimes when a child doesn't understand something, or they're struggling, or they can't read, or they can't count, or something, like, did the behaviors change with that after implementing?
I would say that the culture of my classroom has definitely improved with the confidence of the students, and those students who, like you mentioned, were struggling before and were probably getting distracted because they just didn't understand the content, are now able to focus and are able to complete their work because they have a better understanding of how to do it.
Yeah, I see that, their behavior went from kind of like, not necessarily acting up, but just, they were chatterboxes. And they didn't know what they needed to do. But as we started, or as we continued to build on it and practice, then they were more reluctant to participate, because they had now the idea and the structure that they needed to go ahead and voice, you know, what their responses were. So I think it helped their behavior a lot, because now they really felt like a better need to go ahead and, you know, and use our strategies to answer what, you know, on our content that we're learning that day. So it just helped, you know, in the long run.
Okay. So before today's meeting, I asked everyone to think about potential strategies or adjustments that could improve instruction and support students who are still struggling, because I know we're gonna be realistic. All of our students are not, you know, haven't grown, or, you know, so let's discuss, like, what adjustments do you think we can make to improve our current strategy that we use, or just to improve our results overall. And if you wanna think about that, I don't. Or unless you already have something prepared.
So, I mean, I was thinking about that, and I think a lot of it is, just keeping them involved. Knowing that, you know, they are not just here just to, you know, learn and leave. They're,
Consistent.
yeah, they're here to participate, be consistent, you know, answer, you know, our guided questions. But I think what would help even further would be assigning them roles. So in other words, give them some student role in their group. So for example, if you had kind of like a student leader that can facilitate, you know, whatever we were practicing in that lesson that day, and let that student leader show, you know, their ability to go ahead and, you know, move the group along. You know, if we're doing the ABBA, then they know, okay, well, our A's are gonna speak first, and then our B's are gonna answer. So, and that leader, you know, it's gonna give them that motivation to be able to, you know, to push their classmates, and then vice versa.
Instead of you just being the teacher all the time, you get that
Exactly.
child, so they help with their peer, you know, their peer
Exactly,
partner.
yeah. And then the students that are, you know, participating, you know, they're gonna want to be a leader too.
Mhm.
So they're looking at the way the leader is performing, they're looking at what the role of the leader has to do. And so they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe if I get better at this, then maybe she'll appoint me as a leader too.
Mhm.
So I think that would be a good strategy to kind of implement, just to be consistent and make sure that they're all on the same, you know, task that we've been given.
Anybody else have something to say, about or what adjustments we think we can make? So like, really, so what Ms. Jimenez is saying too is just not stopping after this, like just to keep it going, being consistent. Does anybody have something else for that one, or did she say your thought? Okay.
I mean, it's gonna improve their skills, you know, from even the smallest to the ones that are, you know, really honing in on what we're teaching, and they're just gonna grow.
Mhm.
You know,
They learn better through their peers.
exactly.
And then what about, are there any additional resources or supports that would help us as teachers implement that strategy more effectively? Like, is there anything, or do you think we have everything we need to be able to perform? You know, to go through these processes? Or do you think we have everything that we need?
I mean, just make sure that we're always, you know, giving them that visual representation, giving them the model, you know, showing them what it looks like. I mean, we could always, you know, even at one time visit each other's classroom and kind of take a little snippet video of what it looks like in another classroom. And maybe we can present it to our class as well, and just let them know, look, this is what we're trying to do. This is how we want to be able to learn. Or even use it as a piece where maybe they can find something that they can do better on from what they're seeing that their other classmates are working on. So, yeah, just mainly, you know, providing those interactions, you know, with other classes and other groups.
Like going off of that, just like we can mention too, the consistency, and then we can always learn from one another too. So like you mentioned, what's working for her might not work for me, but what's working for Ms. Jones might work for me. So getting that exposure to each other and how we're doing things and what kids could benefit most from.
Okay, I have a couple more questions. How can we differentiate instruction for students who continue to struggle? Like, what are some differentiations that you think, even we can, like, y'all can take something from each other, like, what are some strategies that we can use to differentiate our instruction for those students that continue to struggle? And
So I like to create a lot of things. So I create a lot of, not worksheets, but a lot of other visuals that I can use for my students. because I'm a very visual learner, and I know I have different types of learners in my classroom, but I really try to also incorporate a lot of visuals, but in different ways. I like to also have a lot of anchor charts with images. In first grade, a lot of our students still do not read. So, and if I do put words on it, I make sure it's not a lot of words. But I do a lot of visuals as well for my anchor chart. So for example, if we're talking about story elements, the setting, I would put like, a cabin, so they remember, okay, the setting is a place. Characters, I'll put, a person, a dog, a dragon, whatever, just little pictures of, what it means. And I feel like that really does help them as well, and then they can refer back to it whenever we're reading or answering questions about it. They look back and like, oh, I remember a setting is a place, and that's helped them a lot as well.
Like for my students, I thinking math, manipulative, so a lot of them are like concrete learners. They need to physically manipulate things. I'm thinking like place value. They need to physically put 10 ones together to understand that we're bundling and we're making a 10, and then 10 tens to make 100. And then also, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, steps how to solve problems. I feel like that's they struggle with like where to start, and so being able to
Checklist.
yes, like a checklist of like how they're supposed to be guided through the problem. I feel like that's very helpful.
Yeah, I think the checklist would be good, because even as we're answering problems, I've seen that they want a real quick mental math, and I'm good with that, but when I ask them, okay, what did you do? Then they struggle with that. So I rather provide them with a checklist. And for example, even today we had a word problem, and I told them, okay, the instructions are asking for a number bond, it's asking for a number sentence, it's asking for your place value chart, it's asking for place value this. So I have them write it on the side, and then as they're solving the problem and providing those other strategies, I have them check off each strategy that they are using. And so that gives them, also more independent, resource to go ahead and monitor what they're doing as well independently. That's one thing. Another one is real world context. So a lot of times they think, okay, we're just learning, math, we're just learning reading, but for what? And so I relate it to the real world, and I say, okay, well, when you're at the grocery store, are you adding? Are you subtracting? Are you putting more? Are you, I give them those kind of, scenarios that we involve math and reading and many things. They might not see it at that time, but if you think about it, you gotta learn how to read, what you see at the grocery store, or else somebody's gonna take advantage of you. You gotta learn how to add, or if not, you're gonna have too much or something. And so I just try to relate different things like that to their community, to their home, even at home. What is it that you're doing at home helping your mom? Are you reading something for her? Are you, measuring something for her? So just things like that, to get them to understand that they can, whatever they learn here, they can take it back home, and they can involve it in, what they're doing on a daily basis or in their community.
And then, okay, sounds good. Okay, so thank you for all of your thoughtful reflections and ideas. Let's summarize the key takeaways from today's discussion. So, what was the strategy success that we have seen to come up with or experienced? What is the strategy from?
So we talked about like our word banks, use that. We talked about our checklists for them to be more independent. Our real world connections. Our visuals,
and then what do you say?
Peer tutoring, the assigning them roles, their roles.
Okay. Oh, that's a lot. Okay. Okay, what are some challenges that we came up with?
I think just to be able to, when you hear that they're probably answering incorrectly, just to keep on motivating them to don't stop there. You know, providing them with, you know, just being sensitive to them when they're, you know, providing whatever response that might not be correct, but kind of guiding them. And just tell them, okay, you might have said this, but maybe you meant to say this. And then that way it's, you know, it's in their thoughts and they're thinking, oh, okay, maybe I didn't mean to say that, but I just said it incorrectly.
It's not just, oh, you're wrong.
Exactly.
Just give them positive
Yes.
feedback.
Positive
Give them
feedback.
Something positive about whatever it is that they answer, still give them something positive.
Exactly.
And then I think another challenge is something that we discussed, those students, like, even when they, like, kind of like summarize, like, what did not work or need improvement? Like, what needs improvement from this? What can we?
I guess just making sure that you visit each one. Make sure that, you know, you have a system in place to where, you're not leaving anyone out. You're seeing the ones that you need to see on a multiple basis, but also incorporating the ones that, you know, are on level or, you know, or already on mastery, but, you know, still incorporate them into, helping, you know, like we're doing the peer tutoring. Incorporating those students to go ahead and become those leaders and go ahead and, help their peers that are struggling.
Also not just like limiting students, like, oh, this student belongs to this group because they, that maybe for that maybe for that specific like topic, but maybe they were successful in something else and they can be the ones to support other students in that, and that also will eliminate what the challenge we had talked about earlier about how some students see it as a negative thing to work in small group, and they think like, oh, I'm here because I need more help, or I'm here because I didn't understand, or I'm here because I didn't know, and that would help with that challenge.
So what are some, next steps of like changes or some new strategies that we can incorporate? What is something, I know.
I mean, I really do want to, I was thinking, you know, using those checklists, but creating like, kind of like a classroom set to where it's available for them. The other thing too that I like to incorporate is, kind of like the anchor charts that we use already, but they're mini versions. And, you know, it can be the different strategies, or it can be examples of, you know, whatever content we're using, in that lesson, and put it on a key ring, and then that way it's available for them in their groups. That's good visuals, and you
And I've
know,
also seen it where they print it and they can add it to their journals.
yes,
But,
yes,
um,
yeah, definitely.
Anybody else?
It's like also being very explicit with and clear with the kids about what their learning goal is whenever we do
Okay.
meet with them, just so that they're held accountable for their own learning, and they're able to also measure whether or not like they met their goal or not, and they understand why we're meeting with them and like the purpose of what they're doing in the grander like scheme of things.
Instead of just pulling those groups in.
Yes, and then they don't even know what they're doing,
Yeah.
what they're working on.
Okay, do we all agree with that list?
Yes.
Okay, anybody have anything to say that they wanna say? Okay. So moving forward, we will implement these adjustments and continue monitoring progress. We'll reconvene as needed to review updated data and refine strategies further. Again, I want to sincerely thank you, each of you, for your collaboration and input. Your participation today ensures that our instruction remains student-centered and effective. This concludes observation video number 3, report progress, monitoring, and adjusting. part 2 formal observation. Thank you for your time and commitment to improving student learning.